Hello everybody and welcome back to the Enterprise Dish. While you will be able to see him clearly here, it might be a little smoky on the stream here as, if anything gets in between our connections because while we are dealing with the pandemic and everything else, Mr. Aaron is dealing with some other issues up in the great Pacific Northwest. How's it going? I say
It's going. I mean, part of the reason for people watching this on video, my appearance is a little different than usual because the light outside is a different color
Oh,
entirely. So that's why I may be looking a little more pale, or I don't know how maybe I'm looking right now, but feeling maybe a little bit more pale. It really is wild, but I mean, the saddest part is we don't even have the worst of it. Portland's twice as bad as Seattle is, easily, if not more.
yeah.
But just a couple more days, but we're also totally spoiled up here because we typically have such phenomenal air quality. We rarely have these kinds of problems. There's usually a couple days or a week a year, actually, more in the last few years, increasingly with the abundance of fires. We get a little bit of smoke, but this is just an incredibly bad run this
So
time. So
what's crazy about it is, so last night we were sitting out on our deck and I looked up and it was kind of yellowish. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. And I looked at the wind flow maps of the smoke and it is quite literally over my house. Now it is nothing I can guarantee like what you have, but that smoke and ash is making it all the way over to Cincinnati, even up into, I think, as far north as Toronto, which is just
yes.
incredible.
That's what I hear. I mean, it just is that gives you a sense of the scale of this situation, and it's quite grave. We had employees in the Portland area helping with evacuations and things, so
Hmm.
it's no joke, man. They're not kidding. It's a serious problem, and yeah, it kind of complicates the landscape. With no pun intended there. It's really a bizarre complication with the pandemic and everything going on. It's just crazy, hard to believe, really,
So
in some ways. But
So to build upon the natural disasters and all that, I can bring something a little home to you, Aaron. So you've met George, right? The owner
yeah,
of
yeah.
BWW. Hurricane Sally that just went through, the eye
Oh
wall
my
went
God.
over his house.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
like I'm not going to share too many details because it's his private information, but like there was like storm surge, everything, and he has sent some pretty crazy pictures of what it's like to be in the middle of a hurricane. So it's coming from everywhere. That's 2020 in a nutshell. Like you think you bombed, but
2020 in a nutshell. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I thought about him actually because I knew that he lived in the deep south, and
yeah,
we've got an employee, actually, one of our lead engineers lives in the Panhandle, and she was looking at an evacuation situation as well.
yeah.
So yeah, it's brutal, and it's happening like as we record this, right?
Yeah.
The devastation continues.
It's
I
just
just can't believe it.
slow moving storm. But
Uh,
things that are, circling the wheelhouse back a little bit, things that have been
yeah,
extremely slow moving in the Windows world that are finally, but potentially going to get better here is that Microsoft is talking about making things that are blocking Windows updates. Like they're going to decipher the riddle. Like usually now it's like, hey, this machine isn't getting it. It's like, why isn't it? And you spin the wheel. It's like, is it driver? You have no idea. No idea. And Microsoft is finally saying, or talking about at least, that they're going to make these things a little bit more actionable. And yeah, it's like,
yeah. So I
there
don't
we go.
understand. I mean, I just read about this. This is pretty hot off the
Yes.
presses, but I don't really even understand how that's going to work, right? I mean, is this an AI thing? Is
Right.
this like, do they know in advance what, some of these problematic issues are, and they're going to prevent those from being installed if it can look at, maybe some WMI filter and say, yes, I know that you're this device and therefore don't do that, and kind
Hmm.
of write it on the fly? Like, do you know any more about that? I mean, it seems pretty vague to me right now.
The only thing I have heard is that the buckets that are going to qualify you to know about an issue are going to be pretty broad, which I don't know if is going to help or not help people. But right now, pretty much you have no idea. So going forward, at least what I initially heard, and again, Microsoft could have completely different plans to it. This isn't written in cement or stone yet. Is that they'll tell you it's a driver issue or a specific hardware configuration issue or something along those lines, or potentially if it's a specific app, but they may not say like, hey, it's actually your specific video driver, because one of the challenge is here is like, let's pretend that they told you it's this specific video card. Well, they don't want to unleash the masses on one of their OEM partners to be like, hey, and then everybody's yelling at them all of a sudden because of something they pushed down through Windows.
Well, and this is sort of the phenomenon with these Windows 10 updates, right? And this is where the belief that Windows 10 is the last version of Windows and you don't have to worry about these things anymore is a total fallacy, right? Mm-hmm. And there doesn't appear to be any movement in resolving that or delivering on that promise. In fact, I was going to say it's the opposite. It's not exactly the opposite. It's just the way it's always been, right? These major updates have, and even some of the not so major updates have changes that require driver updates. Mm-hmm. And they just leave it up to Windows to figure out what you need. And this is really making it problematic. So it's almost exacerbating the problem that they're promising to fix here. Right, they're trying to fix a problem they've created themselves in a way, which is just a head scratcher. But again, as a friend, what do they do about it? I don't know that there's a whole lot that they can do. Like this is sort of the complication. But for us, it's great because it makes the world require a product like ours. Mm-hmm. And I think Intel also released a big Wi-Fi driver update, right? That was resolving some of these blocking issues. For people running 1809 and newer, and so that creates a big work stream for IT and mm-hmm. for our organization as well, who helps a lot of IT. So, yeah, it's kind of a gnarly landscape that way.
It very much so, and it'll be interesting to see. It's possible that they might not ever really truly tell us if they're going to implement this feature or not, because there's a lot of questions that it can raise as well. Specifically, like what if they say their blocking issue isn't really a blocking issue, and then they get it wrong, and then they force all these people to go down a specific path of trying to change their configuration, and then they find out they're wrong or wasn't right. And there's a lot of risk in telling somebody like, hey, that is the problem, rather than Microsoft just working on it on the back end.
Right. And when will, Windows Update or something get the AI to be able to nail some of this down?
Yes.
Right. And give you only and exactly what you need. Right. That's sort of some of what we're trying to work on in terms of giving people more granular control programmatically, as opposed to, deploy and pray, right, and hope that things don't go completely sideways,
right?
Or know that only a percentage of your install base is going to have those sideways making issues, and you just decide to live with it, and someone's out for some issue for some period of time, and you get back on the phone and figure it out. So it's a complex time, especially because now more than ever, there's not a lot of this local, just go grab your IT person and have them help you kind of situate, for most of us anyway, who are still doing the work from home thing. And I know that there are lots and lots of organizations who are pushing deadlines way out, and they're even flipping the discussion to say, do we need these people to come back? Right. And so that's also changing this narrative on how PCs and endpoints in general are being managed, and what changes are being made as this arc becomes ever longer, that people are working from home out of necessity, changes to the infrastructure that are going to make this easier to sustain, because it's coming into it for most people, it was not in a particularly sustainable situation.
Yep, we shall see. We shall see what's going to go on here. Hopefully Microsoft will give us a little bit more clarity soon. But something I know they are not going to give us clarity about, which is something I wrote up today, and I've been hearing this for a while, is Microsoft always has a Surface hardware event where they announce some new awesome hardware. They just, I don't have my Duo down here. They just released the Surface Duo. Yeah, and that thing...
I was going to ask if you got a Duo.
I do. I had it for a couple weeks before they announced it. It's the one sentence review is, if you live in the Microsoft 365 universe, it's a great productivity device. That is the one sentence review. If it's not a great, first off, the camera is not great. It's not a great device for your entire life, but it's a great productivity device, I think, is the appropriate way to talk about it.
I want to like it. I really do. I want to like it. I wanna getting
Yep.
into it at a, you know, like fan and let's go level. It just there's like five things that don't make sense to me about it, right?
Yeah.
Number one, I mean, and this I'm saying this as a person who uses Android and is a
Yep.
huge Android fan. I believe in Android, but it's an Android device.
Yep.
Right. And so Microsoft really getting on this Android train and really getting, fully bought into this whole thing,
Hmm.
Chromium based, Internet Explorer Edge and whatever, uh, a little bit of a weird alternative universe that I feel like we're living in with this, which makes me wonder. The other thing is, in terms of what I've seen, I don't have a device. I've only seen the demos and learned that a bunch of friends and people I've worked with in the past and people who've helped our company along the way are driving this at a program management level.
Hmm.
Great, smart people, but the way that it's designed at a UI UX level, it strikes me a ton like the VMware Horizon mobile experience. I don't know. Do you have
Oh,
any
wow.
experience with that?
Interesting.
Very, very similar to that. The way that VMware presents apps on a mobile device that tries to run
Hmm.
parallel to what your PC use experience or your,
Yeah.
whatever your desktop, thick client desktop
Hmm.
experience is. And so that was a little bit bizarre and haunting. Just like, wow, is that so? I mean, all these things, and so you've got Android. It's being handed to you like kind of this unified endpoint management VMware Horizon experience. It doesn't look like they're doing widgets. Although
Hmm.
once you launch an app, is that really kind of a widget, or is it just running an app traditionally the way Android would? Widgets are one of the beautiful reasons and main reasons to use Android,
Hmm.
right? Is you don't have to launch anything. You have everything right there, your calendar, your inbox, your home automation controls, all these things at a consumer level. You could do the exact same thing on a bunch of these other apps, whether it's CRM, and maybe that's the way it's going,
Yeah.
right? So you look at what's going on with your phone, the Your Phone app as well, which I went ahead and installed and started experimenting with, even though my device isn't supported, and of course couldn't get very far. But it looks like that is also part of this landscape. So now that saying this to myself out loud here, I wonder if there's not a bigger, broader play that the Surface Duo isn't playing sort of a part in, and it's
Hmm.
really not about the Surface Duo, that Microsoft can afford to experiment with different devices and device designs to converge on this more unified endpoint management, future that isn't
Yep.
necessarily a Windows dependency, that is exactly as you described, much more about Microsoft 365.
The one thing that is missing, in my opinion, I mean, there's a lot of little things like no wireless charging. That's an easy fix. There's no 5G. That's whatever. The one thing to me that stands out that is not available on this device, which they had on their Windows Phone stuff, which was called Continuum. You could plug it into the bottom of the phone, and then you got that desktop-like experience on a larger display. That is what the Duo needs, so it can become truly like your entire workflow in that device. But it doesn't exist, at least as of today.
Right. And does that reconcile with this strategy, right?
Yep,
I don't think Microsoft wants to stop selling Windows,
I agree.
right? I don't think they want to take all the OEMs and their own Surface other thick client devices out at the knees. So that was like in my list of five head scratchers. That's the other thing. Is the Duo replacing my phone? And if it's not, now I'm carrying three
Hmm.
devices. And is that like, it doesn't take that long for my X1 Carbon to fire up now, like almost especially if it's in sleep, it's basically instantaneous.
Yep.
Tons of power for all day working. Like I don't know that the use case. So I mean, and this is where I knew I'd get myself into trouble. Obviously, they've done all their research, they've done the
Hmm.
focus groups, they've done all the testing, they've talked to customers. There is an audience for this. Is this a retail scenario where managers on the floor of Walmart are going to flip their Duo open and do a bunch of line of business app magic stuff on the floor? Is this a airline scenario where now you've got, flight attendants, flipping open a Duo in the aisle to, take your food and beverage order? I don't, there are maybe are those kinds of things. There are shop floor, manufacturing
Yep.
floor kind of scenarios. Um, I have to believe that there is an legitimate scale enterprise play here, that maybe I'm not understanding well enough, but there are all these disconnects that are just sort of, I don't know, sort of head scratchers that way.
The only thing I can think of is that you plug it in and maybe it launches some sort of like Windows virtual desktop experience, but I don't know.
Maybe,
Maybe.
right? I mean, and we're seeing that now as well, actually, where increasingly, and including at Microsoft themselves, those walls are getting closed. So you now, if you want to access, certain information, you have to access it via a remote desktop.
Hmm.
Almost more like the financial services industry works,
Yeah.
right? You don't
Yep.
you don't get to access a computer. You don't take any devices away from any of those, banking and investing companies'
Hmm.
premises. There's not an ability to do that. So yeah, maybe. Hmm. They certainly have created an environment and a platform that opens the door to these things, right?
Yes.
This worst case, this is an extremely expensive experiment and learning experience.
Yep.
But based on what it is, I'm kind of surprised they didn't take it a little bit farther for some of the things you talked about,
We got to
camera.
save something for maybe V2 and V3. So we'll see. Uh, I definitely agree with your synopsis that there's likely a larger play here, and we're not seeing the complete picture at least as of yet. So
Mhm.
I think that's an interesting insight to how that potential product will eventually kind of sit in that portfolio of everything. The pessimist side of me says, well, if they go WVD, then there's a nice licensing play there that's going to ruin the entire experience because then you've got to have that license out. And it's like, oh, we can't go there because licensing ruins
Classic.
everything.
Yes, of course. Of course it would, right? I mean, of course that's the way it would go. And there might be a logical use case for that on some level, but I mean the problem with that is the user experience from that device to do, a virtual desktop would be not awesome either.
Yeah, I
The
agree.
resolution isn't that great. The apps aren't optimized for it, right? Part of all the energy that's going on, from Panay himself to down to these guys like my buddy Vineet Thuvara, is they're talking about all the postures and the apps are
Hmm.
optimized for it, and that I'm sure that's true, and that's what you're getting at, right? Relative to the Office suite, where
Yep.
it's really designed to make it work with that, and you can do these cool things you can't do on a traditional device. But I couldn't help but think back to when Microsoft acquired Danger. Remember that they made that really cool T-Mobile phone where you rotated the screen around and it popped up, and that was
Hmm.
really hot for a while.
Hmm.
And then they came out with a phone that didn't go well at all. And I'm so sad because that could have been a real turning point. Um, but this has some of that feel of that design attitude, maybe,
Yeah.
that you want to interact with your device in different ways, and you want to take it a little bit farther, and they maybe carry that over. Maybe there's even a little bit of that intellectual property baked into this. Who
Hmm.
knows? Um, but that sort of was an interesting think back, and to think back to what didn't work with that. Things are very different now, though, at
Yep.
Microsoft. So
We will see.
we'll
We will
see.
see. But I think
Mhm.
this fall, I don't think we're going to see a Surface Pro 8. I think that's been punted to next year. I don't think we're going to see a laptop refresh or what's the other one? Surface Studio refresh. I think we're going to see Surface Pro X2. What I don't know what they're going to call it, but Pro X2.
Hmm.
They're also going to come out with a new think of so if the Surface laptop is analogous to the Surface Pro, you got the laptop and Pro. The Surface Go is going to get, I believe, a laptop companion style device in the same price,
Huh.
roughly the same price point. So
Well, and I think this is going to be a huge chunk of the Ignite excitement, right? It's
it'll be
going to
interesting.
be
Yeah.
a Surface Duo explosion with many, many other Surface announcements. That's my hunch, is that we're going to get more of that insight and detail, the things that you're talking about, plus just everything imaginable will probably say Surface Duo.
Oh, I
You
would
know,
imagine everything. Everybody on
every
the on
tchotchke in the universe.
every stage demo is going to start with a duo. Like that's
Exactly right.
it's going to be duos all the way down. They're going to be
Exactly
walking on
right.
duos, just everything.
Exactly right. And then a nonstop recitation of achieve more. And that's the other thing, is just this
Just
inability to say
beating it into the
anything other
chest.
than achieve more.
Beating it
Oh
into the
man.
chest. Well, I don't want to miss this one, Aaron, because we got another fantastic listener question in this week, and it comes from an individual named Michael, who said we could use his first name. He says, does Aaron have any recommendations for offline maintenance of Windows 10 hardware? It says we have dozens of devices that do not connect to the internet, and our updates are very slow to arrive on these machines. Typically, we are using USB drives to maintain these devices one at a time, and especially during the pandemic, where actually getting to this hardware can be a little bit of a journey. Does Aaron have any faster recommendations than a USB drive?
Well, if they're not connected, you don't have a lot of alternatives. And these are, I mean, these are some of the things. It's a great question, and thanks for asking, Michael. Uh, this is sort of some of the scenarios we've talked about in the past of these kind of specialty devices that'll keep running old operating systems. These are exactly the places where this happens. Even if they're running a modern operating system, Windows 10, and you're on, whatever, 1809 or something,
Mm-hmm.
um, or earlier. You do have this challenge where you don't want this Windows rot problem to creep in, and you don't want any negative surprises and all of that. So how do you close up these 0-day vulnerabilities and all of that? But that is the scenario, right? They're not connected to the network,
Right.
right? So you have a couple of options. One, get it connected, put it on its own little VLAN, and keep it locked down in such a way that you can kind of keep it out of harm's way. But if they're disconnected by design, then you're walking up to that thing with a USB stick and doing it. The nice thing is, in some cases, you can take that opportunity when you're at that device to do a bunch of work on it, right? I mean, bring an air canister and blow all the dust out of it, right?
Yep.
I mean, which bring a respirator, because it's probably hasn't been done forever, and really tune those things up so they don't create a problem when you're spending time with it. You really make it purposeful and make a little investment in it for your own sanity. If you do have the courage to connect it, do it strategically. Think about how you're going to configure a network so that they're all in their own happy little space and protected, and not gonna become vulnerable to exploits coming from the rest of the network. And then how you treat those. Do you create your own little group GPU for it, or give it its own little world to live in, where you can send in the updates and keep them patched properly? That's probably, given the modern world, your best bet. And really, this is a great time and opportunity to plug a webcast we're doing at the end of the month to address exactly these kinds of considerations. We've had a lot of customers ask questions exactly like this.
Yeah.
So we've got someone from Custom Ink, the company that makes your custom T-shirts.
Yep.
They're a customer, and they're going to come on and talk about the things they did like this to combat managing Windows and managing endpoints during this time. And some of these things are infrastructure tweaks and considerations for this long arc of work from home. And whether you might have technicians who are kind of frontline workers, or have to keep showing up to work, or you've got a good reason for them to, but IT doesn't necessarily have to be there. You can do 90+% remote. Well, you don't want to have your 90% go down to 80 or 70% just because of these 10 devices that are thorn in your side. So what are the infrastructure changes that you can make to accommodate that? Kind of exactly this contactless configuration scenario where either, and there are all kinds of situations updates is one of them, new employees is another one, break fix is another one, hard refresh is another one, right? I mean, there are all these ways that you can do all of these jobs and still not necessarily be required to be there if you take a couple steps. But it takes some courage, right? I mean, it's going to take more than just you deciding to do this in a vacuum. Some of these are strategic investments for the long haul. But as people are thinking about this and talking in the context of a return to work in 2022, right, or late 2021, these could really prove to be valuable investments. So those, I mean, that's kind of a long-winded way of saying you got two options. Keep walking to it with the USB stick, but make the most of that time, or figure out an intelligent way to make an infrastructure move, get them configured properly and on a network that's going to be secure and keep them up to date. Not always possible, though. Not
always possible. And unfortunately, we don't know exactly what industry he is in. We don't know. I mean, we could guess, but we have no idea. So that makes it also a little bit more challenging to understand the actual exact nature. But there you go, Michael. Thanks for dropping that question, and we very much appreciate it. Definitely. It's been another good episode, Aaron. I mean, minus the whole world ending outside and everything else going on. I feel like we knocked this one out of the park. It's
We'll take it. We'll take it. And I mean, I think that the nice thing is it can only go up from here. So
knock on wood. Please,
knock on wood.
Like it's going to be the Wyoming super volcanoes get erupt next, and then we're all just going to be.
And then the locusts are coming. So short of that, the good news is that schools are figuring it out, and in spite of schools locally here, for the people who are having the courage to go in or what have you, many events are being canceled due to smoke, in addition to everything else. But we're finding our way in the world, and IT is in the same boat, right? I mean, we just got to find a way in this world, and it's really an opportunity. This is the great thing for all of our listeners. This is a great opportunity for learning and to make a great contribution, right? Furthering what you know and being able to have a feather in your cap for the future and making a profound contribution to the organization in these strategic ways. So one of the things I'll do for our next episode as well is, bring back hopefully some of these learnings from this great webcast we're going to host. And just if you want to register, just visit smartdeploy.com. It'll be up there.
Yeah, there'll be links down below. I was going to tell Aaron offline to send me a link to that because we will definitely include it because that is worthwhile content for sure.
Yeah, I think that would be a very, very good one for sure. And we'll bring it back here too. We can even do sort of a little post game analysis on what that feedback is and how it worked for them. And an example, just not to give away too much, but they're using some commodity cloud storage to help back end some of this so they can do this at a really low cost, but still with good security, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So again, going to sort of this innovation, how are you going to bring, things that will get a nod from your CIO or your CEO or even your operations director, right? And there are ways to do this. So it's kind of teeing up another good discussion. Maybe if this one's a winner, the next one's going to be a grand slam.
Well, we are looking forward to that. To everybody else who's watching, who's not subscribed, make sure you do that down below. You can also find the podcast in all of the major podcast apps. We've gotten a lot of interesting. Right when the pandemic started, like kind of podcasting kind of went way down. Like that was kind of because people weren't in cars. And that sort of mentality. But we've seen a very strong growth the past, 2-3 months or so. Now that we're, hopefully halfway, something like that. I'm going to knock on all the wood. I don't know, whatever you want to knock on, get superstitious about. Hopefully we're more than halfway through this thing. And everybody else, including Aaron, thank you for tuning in. And we'll catch all of you right back here next time.